Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Hello and welcome back. It is the last full week of October in 2017, and we're going to do something different this week. You know me, I don't like to be told what to do. I've spent a whole career in state government being told nothing but what to do. So when I retired, I said, that's enough. I'm not going to be told what to do anymore. You may suggest, you may ask, but please don't try to tell. So this is what this week's lesson is a little bit different. I also, traditionally, I don't do commission builds because the same thing. See point A. I don't like being told what to do. So I had an interesting call a few weeks ago from a gentleman out in the hinterlands of California named Richard, and he said, I'd like you to build a couple things for me. And I'm like, yeah. There's no secret that everything that I build, except for a few precious things, is for sale. If you want to buy it, hey, give me a call, give me a PM, write me an email, send up a smoke signal, come over in person. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Outside of a few very precious things that I cannot replace, everything I build is pretty much for sale. But here are my conditions. I build it the way I like it. If you want to buy it as is, great. I'll be happy to sell it to you. But I don't like taking a laundry list of things. Oh, can you make it look like this? And can you do this to it? And can you do that? And can you add lights and spinning rims and all that kind of stuff? No, I don't do that. If I build it the way I like, if you want to buy it, that's great. Well, this gentleman named Richard and I had a long conversation. He had an interesting prospect for me that I hadn't quite ever considered before. He wanted me to do him a couple of kits, three kits actually, that are basically going to sit on once they're done, they're going to sit on a shelf. They don't need to be lit. They're display pieces. All models are display pieces, but these are at a distance display pieces. He would like the windows tinted to the point where you can't really see in them, so no interiors. Well, that's great. And he had an interesting trio of kits lined up. Spindrift, Flying Sub, the old Monogram Flying Sub, not the new Mobius Flying Sub, and the Proteus. So I said, sure, send me the kits. We'll work on it. Now, I have built more than my share of these Spindrift ever since I was a wee youngin'. I've built a scat of these. It's one of my favorite and one of my least favorite models at the same time because of this joint. Everybody knows that joint, so we'll get into that later. But I had never built one of these tiny, small Flying Subs. I built the large one, but not this one. And of course, this will be my third Proteus. But he wanted the simple shells, tinted out windows, nice body work on the outside, but no interiors. So I said, okay, fine. I quoted him a price on that. It seemed to be quite reasonable. But that's what I'm doing. That's what we'll be doing this week. I'm going to be doubling up on all of these Irwin Allen kits. And another thing I told him is that, a lot of it has to do with how easy are these things to ship, because I have heard horror stories. I have been a part of horror stories where you do something nice and delicate and you pack it the best way you possibly can, and it still arrives at the customer's house looking like it was stomped on by gorillas. So unless I can pick up something in person or deliver it in person, I'm very, very hesitant to mail things out for that reason. But these guys are so compact and so small that when they come to being packaged, I can wrap them up. There's no funky antennas sticking out of them. There's no masts that will snap off. There's no pylons with warp nacelles that are going to break in the mail. These are all very compact, wrap them in bubble wrap type of kits. So I felt pretty confident about that. Plus the fact that there's not going to be a lot of, or any, delicate electronics in them or anything like that. Basically just going to build the shells and as much as what will be seen inside the very tinted windows, and that'll be it. So let's get back. Enough of this jibber jabber, and let's get on to the desktop. Now, a couple of the more astute viewers of last week's video have pointed out that they saw something that looks suspiciously like Spindrift pinstripe masking being worked on, and yes, I can reveal that that is true. I am working on the pinstripes for the front, which is important, and the fin, and also getting rid of the pinstripes on the side, getting rid of those because they were never there, they were never supposed to be there. Get rid of them, sort of like grid lines on your Enterprise. Get rid of those things. So I've got those sanded down. I've also been asked to have the door closed, which is going to make that a lot easier to work with. And tinting the windows. I'm going to also tint the bubble. Of course, I'll paint it the red that it's supposed to be, the clear red, but then I will tint the bottom of it so that you don't really see down into it. And of course, same type of window on the front of the flying sub. I will tint these, and you'll see a little bit of detail in there. I haven't determined exactly how much you'll see until I get everything boxed up, and if it turns out that you see nothing, then I will have done any of this work will have been for naught. But I felt like I was shortchanging the poor man if I did nothing inside, so we'll see how that goes. Well, welcome back. It's Tuesday, and I'm continuing work on what I'm calling the Irwin Allen twofer here. This colorful mess of parts will hopefully one day become two nice display kits for the kind gentleman who is commissioning these for me. So, what I'm doing today is working on the painting masks, because this stripe was the devil of my childhood. Trying to paint that thing in was not easy, and it ended up with a lot of sloppy results. So I'm hoping that by utilizing today's technology, I can make a painting template for that. And also, I am working on the sub, of course. Yesterday I got a lot done. I got the this top side in, and it's solid, and it's good, and it's epoxied, and it's never going to go anywhere, and it's adding a nice amount of weight to the rest of the kit. Unfortunately, I will never be able to do that with the other one because I've got to slide the interior in. And also, it's got this weird thing on the bottom that I don't know why they decided to put it in there with some sort of hook, like a deck hook, so that when this rolled down the deck, it could be hooked and land on it. But I think I'm going to try to fill that in and putty over it and try to blend that area back, because it weren't there on any of the kits that I remember, or any of the shots that I remember. And that brings up an interesting point as to trying to remember where I'm at, because since I've built this, I've built the much superior Mobius larger flying sub, and I'm trying to not get into the mindset of fixing everything to make it look like the Mobius flying sub. Here's that hook that goes there. I'm trying to build it out of the box as it was presented, and not try to go back in and correct a bunch of things. So that's a trick in itself. And I'm also being forced now to remember what a horrible, horrible, horrible joint that is. There's next to no ledge to glue those two pieces together. So all these childhood traumas are coming back to me. Now, the nice thing about the flying sub window is it goes in from the outside, which gives you that nice lip and everything, and I'm going to be able to make a mask for that. Unfortunately, the windows for the Spindrift have to go in from the inside, which presents its own set of problems as far as masking them and tinting them correctly. So where I end up having problems is keeping my focus on what parts of this I'm actually building, and just setting those parts aside and building those. So now that I've got the masks made for the stripe, what I'm going to do is try it out, see how well it fits, and then do all the tweaking that I need to tweak before I go ahead and paint this with the primer like I've done the back here. I've also done a mask for the stripe on the fin, so I won't have to paint those in by hand because that could be a pain. So let's see how our results turned out. Well, I think that's going to work out just fine. I'll make another little chunk to go over the doors, people who want to paint the door separately. But I got that for the hood and the fin. Now I haven't put the other side on, but it matches that. And I'm working on window masks, and yeah, here's the front window. Although I probably will end up replacing this piece of plastic because it does not fit in that frame very well. So I might go with just a couple pieces of PETG in there. Make that, no sense making that harder than it has to be. Also, I don't know whether I've shown this to you, got rid of those stripes because those stripes don't exist on the props. So I won't include masks for them because you shouldn't be using them. Okay, it is mid to late Tuesday afternoon. Work is continuing on the interiors. Now, Richard, this is work you may never even see because of the tinted windows, but it's work that I feel needs to be done, if only for my own sake, that I know that I won't get caught at the last minute with something that I thought wasn't going to be being seen. So the only way I can play it is to pretend it'll all be seen and worry about how it shakes out at the end. But I've put this piece in and I've puttied it in, and I'm going to let that putty heal and dry and cure and all that. And I'll come back and sand that and blend that front panel in. And then we'll, I can put primer on that. So I think I need to strip those off and put the primer on those. And continue to let some of this interior dry out. Okay, one last note for the evening before I box everything up is playing with the appropriate blue. Now there is a white underneath this blue. This yellow is the true yellow of the plastic, so don't think that that's yellow. That's actually white. I'm just looking at the blue against the yellow and seeing what is going to be the best color. You don't want to go with a deep navy blue like you would on a larger version of this. There's such a thing as color scale. The smaller things are the lighter versions of the colors you want to use so that it gives it this proper scale, for lack of a better term. So I have touched up a lot of these little walls on the spindrift as far as getting the instruments painted in. I've got a string of chairs here for the spindrift. So things are coming along quickly in stages. It's just a question of putting all of this stuff together. So it's going quickly. We'll pick it up again tomorrow. Good morning. It is, geez, it's Wednesday already. And we're working continuously on the spindrift and the flying sub, concentrating more on the spindrift this morning. And I've just popped together the cockpit. And I got to tell you, in all the times that I've built this, they've never come out this clean. So either I'm getting better at my building skills or the model's getting easier to make. And I don't think the model's changed any. So I'm quite happy with how that interior has turned out. That's probably the cleanest, neatest job of it I've ever done. And it's got to all be covered up, I know. But because these weird angles, this piece here, these two side pieces, they fit on at weird angles, weird angle to the wall, weird angle to the bottom, and there's no real locating pins. It just kind of slides up against something and gets glued to the edge of it. And it's not really the most secure way to do it. So after I got everything glued and tacked in place, I went and put some clear epoxy on the back sides of those joints just to reinforce them so that they won't be moving out of place, because they're going to get a little bit of pressure and racking when it comes time to fitting it into the body. So best to leave that good and protected. And now since I'm going to be making painting masks for this kit, beyond what Richard once built, I'm going to include painting masks for these little hexagon things and these doors on the inside. And what I've done is I just painted behind them, and I'm covering them up so that I can spray the wall color around them, make it easier to paint that way. And then I will pop that onto there and then bury the whole thing into there. So I'm also working on the stripes. I like the color of the filler primer. It's a light gray, and that's the color I'm going to make the main stripe, is this light gray. So I'm masking off the color that I wish to keep, and now I'm going to paint in the blue pinstripes next, then cover those up, and then paint the orange on top of that. So let me mix up an appropriate color of blue, and we'll get to it. Before I paint the stripe, I wanted to go ahead and do the back wall. See, I've gone ahead and put the masks in there, and now you can paint the green wall over top of that and not have to worry about trying to paint all those little fiddly bits. And I chose a blue for the back wall. You can make it red or orange or whatever color you want for that. Actually, you could try to simulate the lava looking by painting it like a nebula and all kinds of different colors in there, and then just put your masks over top of that. But for the quick and dirtiness of it, I just had a light blue out, so I painted it light blue, and now I'm going to paint the green over top of it. Also did the simulated wood grain on both of those doors. Okay, the blue stripes are painted on, and fairly sloppily and fairly neatly. Wasn't worried about, I mean, I didn't want to spray over just every place, but I didn't have to worry about being too neat, because now I will, after these have had a good long time to dry, I mean hours upon hours, I will go and put the pinstripe masks over the blue and start working on getting the orange painted on there. So look at that, and the stripe on the fin. So let it dry, and maybe I'll go off and work on the flying sub a bit. We're finishing up the interiors of these two little ships, and I just took the masks off the back wall, and there you have your nice sharp lines around your reactor wall and your back doors to nowhere. So now what I'm going to do, and here is the flying sub interior. Won't see a lot of that, but it's there. I'll know it's there. Richard will know it's there, even though he can't see it, but it'll be there. So it also adds weight to the inside of the ship. So now what I'm going to do is glue this down to there, and then put some epoxy around the bases to seal those walls in good and tight. Here's a tale of two interiors. Say that 5 times. Tale of two interiors. Fitting nicely, and I think these are about as clean and as nice and as easy as it's going to get for a while, because now the lugging and tugging as far as getting things to bend to my will and fit are going to start happening. But what I want to do is, now that these walls have dried in, I want to reinforce them with some epoxy and get ready for the intensive struggle work, because when it comes to parts like this and making them fit and making everything line up, that's when I think we're going to have to end up putting some stress on the parts. So let's get some gluing done. Okay, we're at a good stopping point where I can stop in doing stuff and start shooting pictures of it. See, the last time I epoxied a little bit of screen in there to give the screen look that I was hoping for. I have tinted the dome to go on there, so that's good to go. I finished up the interior on the sub, and I've got the walls all epoxied down to the floor. It's all one good chunk of piece of interior, so it's getting ready to be epoxied into the base of the flying sub. The cockpit of the spindrift is all epoxied together and glued up, so it's getting ready to be epoxied into place. I painted the grills and the engines, or in reverse, the grills and the engines of the spindrift. And what I did was, first I painted the interiors, and then I did a dry brushing of black over top of them, so to give the appearance of lit active engines. And then I've got these masks cut already to go over those, so that I can paint the hull color around those and not disturb what I have done inside. Okay, I'm starting to throw some color at the hulls. This, for some reason, is showing up at very bland, but it's actually got some browns and oranges going on to help break up the hull and make it look less like a toy. And there's the bottom of it over here. And let's see, here's the fin with the mask on it. And I'll let these dry for a while. I'll probably put another coat on them before I remove the masks. And we'll see how well that goes. And here is the interior. You saw that already. So, oh, I'm working on the bottom of the flying sub because it had that weird little hook apparatus that didn't really belong there. So I'm puttying that over. But starting to throw some color at the front and see how well that's going to react. And of course, here's the inside of it, and it's ready to go. And we'll see how much. Oh, I also painted the inside, so just in case have any gaps showing. It'll be won't be the yellow paint, won't be the yellow plastic. Okay, coming up on moment of truth time. Time to remove these masks and see how well the pinstripes turned out. Keep your fingers crossed. That's not bad at all. I'm very happy with that. Tiny bit of touch up to be done on the, there's one spot here on the fin that I need to touch that blue up, but certainly better than having to paint the whole thing by hand. Look at that. Boy howdy, I'm happy with those results. Who wouldn't be? Pretty darn sweet. Yes sir, now I'm going to quick put a coat of satin on this to protect it before I go any further. Well, welcome back. It is, what is it, Thursday night already, and I didn't get a lot done today. I got hardly anything done today because I was tending to family matters. Only thing worse than being retired yourself is having a sister who's retired, and when I retired, I started going around the house finding all kinds of little projects that needed to be done, and I went about doing them. She retired, she found out all kinds of little things, projects around the house that needed done, and she got me to do them. So today I was in the exciting world of putting trim around the door and picking up wainscoting and chair rail and all that kind of stuff for redecorating of her son's room. Now that he's moved out, she's redecorating. So lucky me, I get to help her with all that. So we're going to jump back onto the flying sub and show you what we're going to do tonight. There's your spindrift. Very happy with that. I'm to the point where I almost don't want to touch it because I don't want to screw it up. So tonight's job on the spindrift is going to be, because of the way it's built, this is the way what we got to do, is I want to glue this interior in and get this guy glued down tonight and get all kinds of epoxy sealed and all that. And then we can try to rest this one into shape tomorrow, into position. Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, last work day of the week, and I'm going to be closing up these two kits today. That's the important thing. I've got the spindrift, I've got the interior epoxied in. Everything is in good solid shape. I've got the interior and the other wing covering on the flying sub and epoxied in, and that's all in good solid shape. And now we come to the trickiest parts of, you can see I'm still epoxying in those windows, it's still drying, but I've got the door and the window on the other side of the hood, and we're coming down to the trickiest parts, and they both involve the window frame, right in there and right in there. Getting those angles matched up and as best as you can and secured is the trickiest part of both of these kits. So once this window has the epoxy is cured on that, I will mask those windows from the outside and get ready to put the hood down. But for Richard's deal, I need to tint those windows, so I've got some window tinting film that I'm going to put on the inside to darken those down substantially, and then we'll be ready for the last bits of construction. On this one, we're in really better shape because the window pieces attached from the outside, so I can leave them off almost until the very last. I just need to do something to block the paint from getting inside there, but the windows I can put in last, so I can do a bunch of body work before I have to do that. These guys are the tough part. Getting these little toothy grills in, and then getting this window frame in, and everything meeting at the right angle. That's the tough part. So that's going to take the most extensive amount of brain work. Okay, and now we begin the unenviable task of trying to get this hood to sit properly on all of those angles. And the first thing we're going to do, or we're going to have to do, the first thing I did actually was I poured some epoxy in behind, how well you can see it, behind those fin pieces, these fin pieces here, the grills, because this is a very delicate joint there, and so I wanted to reinforce that with epoxy to make it strong, because there's going to be a lot of stress on it. So those are all in and strong and cured and all of that good stuff. So the next thing we need to do is, as much as a help as they think they're doing, I'm going to knock off those pins, because the pins are actually more in the way than anything else. So let's see how it looks after that. Okay, I'm going to switch gears here and put the top on the flying sub, or at least start it. And I think the important thing is to get this seam, this joint done and clean and nice, because that is going to be the most noticeable. So I am going to put a bit of CA up into here, up inside there, and put this joint together like that, just at the front, and then I can kind of twist and tug it around to line it up going the rest of the way back. But I'm thinking a good super glue on the front of that will be the best first step. This is coming along very nicely. I got rid of those pins on the hood, and it's giving me a nice good joint, and I'm going to do a similar thing, only I think with epoxy, to do a U shape, do here, here, and then there. Get that all dried in, and then I can tug the front windows into place. Well, this is fun. I've got the top down on the flying sub. Now you've got some gap there, and I think that's just the nature of this old kit. It's not going together very seamlessly, but obviously those are easy enough to fix. What I need to do now is lay in some super glue along this joint to kind of reinforce it as best I can, and then I'm going to put some putty in those gaps to fill them in, and then let that set to dry for a good long time. Then come back to it and take the tape off and do the final body work. Okay, I've just spent the last few minutes sculpting in some detail that was kind of missing in all of the joints that happen when you put all these pieces together. And I've got the basics in with epoxy sculpt, and when that dries or cures, I can shave it down a little bit and point it up with a Bondo. So we're going to let the flying sub rest for quite a while before I take the clamps off, and now we need to do the same type of highly stressful work on this. Okay, as you may be able to tell, I have cleaned off the desk, and it's time to tint the windows. And to tint the windows, I am using, hey, what do you know? It's window tint. This is made for cars windows, but works well on the model windows as well. And I find this better than trying to spray them and getting an even, absolutely even shade of black on the windows. So what it is, it's a little bit of film. It's got a sticky side, or a static electricity side, or however you want to describe it, that you peel up and stick down, but you need to make sure that your glass or your plastic is absolutely clean. So I've wiped them down with a little bit of alcohol, let them dry. Got no fingerprints, no grease on them, so everything should stick. And all we got to do now is cut some little pieces out, like this one, and peel off the backing and place it down. One sheet of tinting later, and we are ready to install this hood. Now you can't really tell that much because I've got masks on the outside of the windows to keep them protected, but there is definitely a tint going on the inside. And here's our dynamic duo. Sorry, wrong franchise. But here are our two ships for the week. This is where I'm going to leave them. Now, this is ugly, yes. I've got, this is not glued in either. I've got the glue joint around the back here. And I'm going to let that, it's epoxy, I'm going to let that set up all weekend long because I'm going to have to put some tremendous pressure and strain on this to get the front end to line up. So a lot of plastic under stress there. Going to have to let that go and heal. This is kind of the same deal. I've got some epoxy sculpt in the seams. I want to let that set up all weekend so that I can tool it Monday and start doing some Bondo. And I might do some Bondo work over the weekend, but get this ready to otherwise get all the body work on it, get ready to paint. And then we'll be down to the bases. Now, I've only got the windows to put in here, and then the detail painting, and then some sort of base, probably one of these. And then this, I need to, like I said, do all of that blending work and get that nose back in joint, and take the masks off of these and clean up the orange paint that's been scuffed in the process, and then work on a base for it. And I am not going to I'm not going to use one of these bases for it. I'm going to do a little, get a little block of wood, maybe do a little landscaping type of base like it was landed, or as if it were landed. And to accomplish that, I might need to go to Michael's and get some foliage or some lichens or something to give it a ground base. So that's also going to hide a multitude of sins on the bottom that might not won't be seen otherwise. So I'm going to do a little bit of re-entry scorching, not too much on either one of these, but I'm going to do a little bit, just something to break up the surface a bit on this leading edge here, maybe a streak or two here, maybe a streak across its bow, that type of thing. But considering these were basically 2 boxes of plastic parts just less than a week ago, I think we've come a long way. This Spindrift was a personal demon that I'm glad to have exercised from my youth, because like I said, I've done this ship a couple of times when I was a kid, and I never got those lines to come out the way I wanted them to. And that's going to do it for this week. Like I said, done pretty darn well on these 2 ships. Watch them pass in the night. Ooh, there are 2 ships passing in the night. Yes, these 2 guys have a lot in common, beyond the fact that they're Irwin Allen kits, beyond the fact that they both have weird little funky windows up front, beyond the fact that they probably used a lot of the same sets, and I know they shared enough of the same monsters and stuff. So there's a certain kinship. Actually, if I were going to do the trifecta, I would put a Jupiter 2 in this same family setting, make a family portrait of these 3. But I digress. We'll be finishing these up next week. We'll be starting into November. It's last full week in October. Next week is Halloween. Go out and enjoy and eat some candy. So until next week, when we get back to these 2 ships, I will say be good to each other, and we'll see you here next time.